of the land and, see how, what he's got to work with and talk to Father Mark a little bit. And, in honor of all that, Father Damien's going to be cooking up a storm. So I've been doing my part to reinforce things. So I'm making my famous kale. That'll be a, one more item in the midst of the unpronounceable things that we'll be having. So it's intercultural, and I think of some of the things that the international folks have to deal with when they come to the United States, and it's fine to have a trade-off. What's your favorite international food, Meg?
Anything that my mother-in-law in Brazil cooks is excellent. They're really good at anything meat, beans with meat, Brazilian cheese bread. So really good. All their, I would say I like really simple, basic dishes with whatever the local flavor is that they give to it. So,
well, the Brazilian approach to steak is pretty famous, isn't it?
Yeah, they have just some different cuts, picanha. I don't even know what that translates to in English, but it's just they just know how to cook it well. And when Marcelo comes in, he travels a lot for work. He busts out the grill, and we eat tons of meat, with a little, maybe salad or something on the side. So,
yeah.
But yeah, he's a master griller.
I like Mexican and Italian, but honestly, since I've only been out of the country once in my life, no, actually that's not true. I've been to Canada, I've been to Mexico once, and I've been to the United Kingdom. But I don't know if any people always laugh when they come from other countries, and we take them to whatever a Mexican or. And they just kind of laugh. This is kind of like the United States version of whatever. So I'm not sure how much real ethnic food I've ever had, but
Yeah, I'm blown away that the few times I've traveled, like if it's to Italy or like probably Israel, that there's McDonald's around the corner.
Right.
Yeah, but the best food is like the most simple, cuisine of the culture. I actually wanted to do a cookbook back in the day, just highlighting some of those most basic ingredients that the more humble people make tend to be most delicious in my experience. So.
All right. Well, listen, it's about 10 o'clock. So just want to welcome everybody that's starting to tune in to the Parish Coffee Hour with Father Paul and friends. And so I'm just going to turn it right over to Father Paul and let him get us started.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you today. It's certainly a somber time in the life of Kentucky and our nation. We know that there was the decision yesterday afternoon with regard to the Breonna Taylor's case and the situation of the police. And as all of us are together, I'm not sure if I want to comment on that, but I sure do want to comment on the importance of public gatherings and peaceful demonstrations, nonviolent demonstrations. It's part of the whole ministry of advocacy of how we help the everyday person, the grassroots person, to have a voice that's heard. And when you really think about it, that's the story of how years and years ago women's suffrage came into reality. And when you really think of it today, it's a no-brainer. My goodness, why should not women be voters? And yet in our history, that it wasn't the case. And we think of the integration that's happened so far, whether that's school integration or some of the movements that were related to the actions of Dr. Martin Luther King and his contemporaries. And again, the power of nonviolent demonstrations. And again, we can see how that can degenerate into violence, that whether that comes from the powers that be who are overreacting or making mistakes, or whether that comes from the inside or whether that comes from infiltrators. It's terrible when a demonstration evolves into something that's violent. Again, there's been advocacy, writing letters, demonstrations, the minimum wage, the establishment of unions and their power in the workplace. And of course, the Right to Life movements with all the different kinds of demonstrations that take place there. So we are called to be part of a culture and part of a church that trusts the power of advocacy. We all know that we're called to a ministry of charity as we provide help for people. We all know that we're called to a ministry of empowerment as we help people to find their strengths and to build on those so that they can, as the saying goes, be able to do the fishing themselves rather than be the recipients of the fish. But there's also the ministry of justice, and that calls for laws to be changed and calls for hearts to be changed. And whether it's the advocacy of letter writing, telephone calls, personal visitations, talking with friends, or nonviolent demonstrations, that's part of it. So of course we're saddened by all that's going on with the demonstrations and the destruction that seems to be part of it, and some of the violence, and yet we know that done in the right way, advocacy that's nonviolent is really a source of power in helping to change things. And really, honestly, that's what Build is about. And our program today is about the program of Build, and the power of Build. It's a program that we as a parish are committed to. And with me today are Meg Campos, our social outreach minister, and Deacon Tim, and both of them have been involved as leaders with Build from our parish's standpoint, and I've been involved also. So the three of us are going to talk about it. And first I'll open it up for you, Meg and Tim, if either of you want to speak a little more on the advocacy role of the church and church people. But if you want to just start talking about Build and what the letters stand for, let's take it from there.
I think, again, back to the charity, it's, that's all that's needed. It is definitely the, feeding the hungry, clothing, providing clothing and all of that. But, justice is really what gets at the structural and the policy issues that help resolve, what the causes of those. So that's just, important to reiterate that they are both needed. Charity can be more individual based, but justice requires people working together from all walks of life. And I think that's one of the things that is good about Build, is that it brings a big faith-based community together to look at these issues and work on them together from a justice level.
Yeah, and I think the words or the letters of Build, Building United Interfaith Lexington.
Through direct action.
Direct
action.
action. There you go. It is an interfaith group that comes together, and we're a whole bunch of different churches that don't agree on everything, but what we do agree on is that we can make our city a safer and more just place to live, and so we come together to sort of listen, and that's where we start the process every year with. We just listen to people, what's really going on in people's lives that keeps them awake at night. It gives them concern, and we have plenty of that, as we know already. But we come together and try to just hear where people's real problems are, real lived problems, and then the organization has this process to help us to try to do something about it. It's the thing I've loved. I've been involved in Build off and on for about the last 12 years, is that it is a process that really goes from that very just listening to, okay, what can we do to make a difference in some particular problem that our city is encountering? What can we do about it? And so there's a whole process that goes on throughout the year. And what I love about Build is that it really opens the door up for everybody to be engaged in the process to whatever extent they can. So it's not like one size fits all when you get involved in Build. It's what can you do? What are you interested in? Where's your passion? And there's a place you can probably plug in and be a part of what Build's all about.
And then, Deacon Tim mentioned the listening process. That happens at each parish or church that participates in Build. And so you're getting the feedback of what concerns people in the community across the spectrum. And that's how they look at and determine issues. And Build's been around. I know Deacon Tim said he's been around, involved in it for several years. I believe it was formed in 2003, so it's not a new organization. It has experience and a model, under its belt. And I think right now there's 26, 27 congregations from in and around Lexington, from all diverse communities that participate in Build. And so it really has a voice of the community and a voice especially of the faith community.
I think it's striking too that it starts right now with, they call it the house meeting, where people gather together and granted they it's in downtown inner city churches, and it's in suburban churches like ourselves. It really brings us to have a heart and an understanding for some of the things that impact people in churches that are in the downtown area, or in areas where there's more violence, and we know that there's been violence in our city, and a lot of the numbers just seem to keep growing year after year in terms of the shootings. We're struck, I think, we start together with all these different churches, and gradually we come up with some commitments for the year of what we want to work on. Can you speak of what seems to be the emerging commitments for this upcoming year? Meg, do you have those, or? Yeah.
You mean the ones that are carrying over from last year? Those are, let me think. I have them. One that you mentioned, the violence around town. There's been rising gun violence. So Build worked with to identify different organizations or models around the country that have been successful in other, similar cities or situations. So they've called for the implementation of a new kind of intervention strategy at group violence that involves, just working from more targeting those that are responsible for most of the issues in the community, and trying to help resolve their situations in a way that would get them out of, using violence as a solution. So
I think another one of the ones that we've been working on, and that's the thing about Build, is it's not like, even though it's an annual sort of process, it's not like, it's not like TV sitcoms, right? You don't start with something and then 30 minutes later or an hour later, it's all, everybody lives happily ever after. A lot of these problems that we choose to deal with really have a lot that has to happen to, first of all, just to identify the problem, and then work out what are some real solutions that have worked elsewhere. Another thing I really like about Build is that we just don't sort of pick something out and somebody wakes up one day with a good idea. It is a process, and then after we have this listening phase, there's a research phase. And so when we identify a problem, we say, okay, where has this problem been dealt with successfully, or where are they dealing with it successfully? Because one of the things Build's about is not trying to reinvent the wheel, or invent the wheel for that matter, but to find out where a particular problem has been dealt with, is being dealt with successfully, and really understand that through the research process, and then put together a proposal that we can present to our community leaders, wherever they happen to be for that issue, and really say, here's something that can work. This can work in our city, and then we take it from there. But another problem, sorry, I got off on a tangent there, but another one of the issues that we are continuing to deal with is in the area of mental health, and trying to recognize that too often people that are suffering from, that have mental health issues, are being caught in sort of this vacuum of, they don't have the help they really need to manage their mental health issues, and they get caught up in by the police, who basically have little training, some training, but not enough to how to deal with somebody, and not just immediately. So what happens is a lot of people that are on the edges of our society that have mental health issues are ending up in jail, or they're ending up at the ER. And again, people try to do some immediate things, or they get dealt with immediately, but then shortly they're back on the street again, and again without the help and support they need. So one of the issues Build has been trying to tackle for the past, oh gosh, at least 2 years, if not 3, is how do we provide our community a set of resources where people can now get help that they actually need to uh, take them off the street, give them the support they need in a multifaceted approach, so that they don't get into the trouble and then show up again in the ER, or in a jail, where they really can't get any help that's going to help them change the direction of their life. So that's one of the issues that Build is continuing to try to work with to improve. So.
And so that my understanding is with that, if they do, it's trying to get them more to a mental health court where they can take into, context their mental health needs and try to get them that help that they needed.
Yep.
The other one of the other issues that I believe was added just last year is regarding school suspensions. And so that's, still in the early phases of, the process. It was raised last year at the Nehemiah Action, I believe. And so there are, appear to be more, based on the research, more students of color that are, getting suspended for the same issues that maybe someone else commits but don't get suspended. And so the goal obviously is to keep more people in school, because that's where, if you are suspended, you get behind and all of that. So it's trying to use restorative practices. The research model that they pointed them to is using restorative practices to keep the kids in school, to stop that cycle of, being suspended and losing out on education, and get them the help that they need, and best practices for, working on the situation. And they've used models from other schools. I know they've visited and looked at those in practice at schools in Louisville, and probably beyond. So that's one of the other issues that will be on the agenda again this year.
One of the other issues is, for the city to provide more and more affordable housing for our people. And that's always a challenge. And we know that's been a challenge with the budget in this delicate year that we're in. But again, as we look at the situation of people who are, whether they're homeless or virtually homeless, that certainly is an issue that we try to address. So Build tries to name some of the problems and then make strong suggestions of solutions. So again, it's a process. It starts on the you might say the congregational level with the house meetings that reflect on the contemporary issues. It moves into the gathering that happens, that brings people of churches together. It's like a kind of a rally in a sense that helps us to all be together from the different churches. They have representatives at one of the large churches, and a lot of times it's one of the African American churches that we gather at, and to, in a sense, to have almost like a prayer service and a clarification in that prayer service of the causes and that we want to challenge and work with. And it all culminates eventually with what's called the Nehemiah Action, which is an assembly that will gather close to 1,000 people from a variety of churches. Well, it's over 1,000. And usually we've been using Heritage Hall, and we ask city officials and government officials and police leaders to be present. And, on behalf of Build, there's from the grassroots, there's presentations and then questions. A strong question of we've come up with this research. We know what's going on, that is that's problematic, and we know that you're doing the best you can, but here's some other ways. Would you like to implement it? Would you like to, use some more resources? Would you like to spend some more money? Would you like to care for people who are in need and suffering within our community? Is there more that you can do? So there's that piece. It almost like runs through the equivalent of a school year as the process goes on. This unique year, of course, a lot of what will be happening will be taking place on a Zoom basis, as we won't be able to meet together. So that's going to be a positive thing. Meanwhile, a lot of other stuff keeps going on. There's a staff who works with Build. You speak of the staff, the board of directors. I think it all got started in maybe 7 or 8 years ago in Lexington, or has it been longer than that?
I have 2003 down.
Yeah.
2003.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Yeah, and I think there's a, the Build is, even though it's think of Build as a local instantiation or a local group that's patterned on a national organization known as DART. And I don't know if you remember what DART stands for, but basically this is a process that's sprung up years and years ago that's about community organizing and coming together and bringing people of faith together to look at their community and then get organized, right? And then maybe that has some connotations with people, but honestly, I've been involved, like I said, for years, and the beauty of it for me is like, hey, this is a community of people who are coming together. And again, our faith communities, we certainly have our differences, things that we not necessarily going to come together on. However, all of us want to make our city a better place to live in, a more just place to live in. And so who can't get around that if that's really what the goal is? And so this whole process or method is something that there's different cities that have a Build equivalent in them, and they're sort of loosely affiliated. There's sometimes they have national get-togethers where the leaders come together and sort of trade notes and see how things are working and so on and so forth. But the idea is that this is just all it is, and the staff here in town helps all of us individual church communities to be able to organize, to get our act together, so to speak, and to be able to pull the community together in a way that gets behind whatever it is that we're discerning. And one of the things I like about the process is that it's not the staff. They're not driving okay, we're going to work on this year, right? Or we're going to do that. They're really about helping the churches themselves figure this out, through a process of discernment, listening, and research and all of that. So they're really there to help support the churches who are actually doing the work, so to speak. And the staff obviously supports that. They help the organizational part of it to happen. We couldn't do it without, if the Build, the churches could not pull 20, imagine trying to pull 26 different churches together and getting them all lined up to do anything, right? Much less a really serious, effort endeavors as we're trying to do here. So the staff of Build is really integral to what happens. But again, they're sort of think of them as supporting or undergirding what the churches are actually doing and just helping us to be organized about it. So
Their staff is just about 2 or 3 people, isn't it?
yeah. I think it fluctuates. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. But yes, it's a small staff, and but boy, are they, like I say, they really are the glue that helps the churches come together and be organized about how we're doing things. So, and as you can imagine, with 26 churches, we are a really diverse group in all, income, career, race. Every aspect of, we are very different communities of people in many ways. So it's really amazing. And that was the thing that struck me, my first Nehemiah action when I went to it. I was just so impressed with, gosh, here's a community. I had never been in a anything prior to that involved that many different faith communities coming together. I personally had not. And so I was just overwhelmed at at these people of faith coming together and really actually trying to work to make their community a better place, a safer place, a more just place. So, gosh, that was the thing that just struck me right off the bat.
I think a lot of people who've been involved, say from a parish like our own, would say, uh, well, I've been to St. Peter Claver a time or two, and but this is different. It's working with a lot of other churches that are African American, and some of our worship services with Build are guided by a Black choir, and it's such a wonderful thing. It's a stretching thing for us, but also to sit down and hear from from a woman who lives in the inner city of what it's like to live with the violence that's impacted her family, what it's like to on occasion to hear bullets in her neighborhood. That's not necessarily the experience in Chevy Chase, but it's our city, it's our sister, our brother. So we want to do what we can in the midst of that to help things to be better.
And also, in addition to the Build staff, there's a board of directors, right? A board that meets and it has representatives from all the participating churches, I believe, right? Yeah.
Basically, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Basically, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I always, again, for a while, I would take that sort of, our parish is very privileged, let's say. In today's parlance, we've got a lot of people who are, upper middle class, upper class, in terms of financial and so on. And so it's easy to sort of look at Bill and go, well, we don't have a lot of gun violence in my neighborhood or this, that. But honestly, there's a lot of problems that we deal with. For example, people being on, drug addiction, the drug addiction problem, it hits everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's easy to sort of dismiss and say, gosh, we, here at Christ the King, we're sort of protected. And in some ways we may be, but boy, there's other things that Build is looking at that, in fact, I know one of our parishioners who has a child, and I know they're not in the, there's many who have a child or somebody that's been pulled into the drug culture. And so again, it's not like we're somehow isolated. We're part of the city. And if we do have extra means available, we should be applying those means to help these problems. So I'd say for people that are listening from here at Christ the King or any of the Catholic parishes for sure, just come and be a part of this, because it's all about our city. At the end of the day, it's about making our city that safer place that we can raise our families in and feel good about, that we have a city that is focused on helping those that can't speak for themselves, don't have the means to defend themselves, and so we want to, be there. Build is a way to be a part of that voice for those people, and again, especially, this is one of the blessings of the pandemic. I hate that we have the pandemic, but because Build, at least in this, the early part of the cycle here, as we start the listening process next week, it'll all be able to, just like this. It'll be on Zoom. We won't be streaming it, but we will be. If people want to be involved, they just need to get in contact with myself or Meg, and we will give them the Zoom invitation for that session. And so you can begin to participate from your living room, in your gym shorts and your T-shirt at night. You don't have to go out to a meeting. But this is the process that begins the whole yearly cycle, is this listening process that we're talking about. So I just want to encourage everybody right now to do that, to come and listen, be part of that listening process, and you actually have a voice that lends to our bigger voice, but you have to be there. You have to be there to participate.
And it's much more powerful. I know a lot of people will write a letter to whoever in the city about something that concerns them. But when you have a unified voice coming together, it's just that much more powerful and that much more likely to make change in the community. And really, all of these issues, you may think that they don't affect you, but they do because it's the community we live in. So we do, especially as Christians, have to think about what impacts our brothers and sisters, impacts us and the community. And we should work for what's best for everyone, and not just our neighborhood, but everyone in the community.
One of the things I guess I struggle with, and I imagine a lot of people do, that's which is maybe why we got 26 churches involved, with the multiplicity of churches throughout our city. We just, for instance, I will say very proudly that of our 8 parishes in town, 7 are already members of Build, and I think the other one's considering it. So we're as a Catholic church, we're a strong voice with Build. It's that sense of humility. We might say, well, what do I know? Am I a politician, or am I one who's skilled with social analysis and doing all this research and then proposing some kind of an answer? The other side of the coin is the problem's there. And the problem isn't getting any better. And you can name the problem. With the research that's done, with I think the convergence of ideas, we get to what I'd call like a collective boldness, as we say. Here's what we are convinced would be a solution, or here's what we are convinced will make things better. And again, it's so delicate. A lot of times, the quest for justice is controversial. If we would, you could notice how we danced around what's going on. In the racial tension these days. There's no easy answer that you can just pull out. But as we work on things together, as we listen to people's stories, we might not come up with the absolute perfect solution, but we believe we can come up with some things that alleviate the situation and that make things better. And again, it's all done in a prayerful context. It's a spiritual kind of thing too, and it's based on scriptures. It's based on Old Testament and New Testament scriptures together as we move forward with Build. So those are some of the things that strike me. As you notice, either within yourself or among others, Meg and Tim, some of the things that motivate people, some that are almost like challenges that stop a person from getting involved with Build. If you could articulate some of those from your standpoint, that'd be.
Yeah, I think to me, the biggest thing that people, coming into Build is you made the distinction at the beginning. You and Meg both, I think, talked about the charity versus justice and the difference, that those ministries are. And one of them is, justice. I mean, when we do charity work, and it's very needed, the immediate needs of people, but it's easy. I can write a check. I can prepare a meal or bring a casserole to go to Catholic Action Center, right? All needed things, but they don't call us to really jump in and get super engaged most of the time, unless you're organizing it, of course. But with justice work, it quickly becomes apparent it's very difficult to make anything happen, because typically, if it was good and it was happening, it was already happening, we wouldn't have a problem, right? But now we have a problem. As you said, there's problems out there, and oftentimes the problems haven't been addressed because it just hasn't been a priority. That our leadership in whatever area is focused on different things, and that doesn't mean they're bad people or they're making bad decisions. It's just that this particular issue hasn't risen enough up on their radar for them to apply the resources it takes to fix it. So justice work by its very nature is messy, it's hard, and so when you get into this world, it's not like you're going to come to a meeting or two, we're going to come up with a solution, and bam, it's, we're done, let's go on to the next thing. So Build, I think, is tried to sort of bring this down to a process we can all be part of in our own little way, and but yet come together, and as you said, collectively together with not only within our parish, but then within all the other churches, we can come together and our power can be put to good use. But it is hard, and I think that's the biggest thing I would encourage people to say is just be ready for that. Be ready that this isn't going to be a quick fix kind of thing. But it is a process that works. I can show before the end of the session. I can pop up here. We have like 15 things that Build has done over the years that have worked, that have actually made a difference in our own city. And it was because people came together, put the research, came together, identified the problem, got together on research teams to research, and then, like you said, Father Paul, bring that proposal back to our leaders. And often that's another problem, is there's some contention. It'd be great if we could walk in there every time and just sort of say, here's our solution. They go, oh, great. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll get right on it. Right. But that doesn't happen very often. So oftentimes there's a process, an engagement that happens, and it may extend over some years.
Yeah, the leaders, they'll say, well, we've been working at it. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be in this position if we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
And so it's respecting that, but also respecting, well, nobody knows everything, and it's important to hear from the people.
And another thing to add in that research process, and what they narrowed the ask down of the decision makers, is something that when they do the research and narrow that down, they really focus on something that is feasible, that can be adopted. And when we talk about an ask and a collective group getting together to make a request of our leaders, I guarantee you that others, more powerful organization, maybe economically or whatever, who have business interests or whatever, regularly ask things of our government officials, having worked in government. And so it is good to have even put different voice and to any issue that's in our community. Because, if you look at affordable housing, there's tons of different people that are weighing in on anything related to affordable housing. And it's usually, I don't want it, near me. So there also has to be that counter voice of but people need an affordable place and decent place to live. So, the government has to take in and hear all of those to make a decision that is in the best interest of the whole community, and including the people that need housing.
I noticed Cabby's watching. She's was on the board until recently. This work is hard and messy, but it's essential to our faith, and together we can make and have made serious changes. So, I sort of painted a heavy picture there. The beauty of Build is that we can all come together and we can all contribute whatever we can do individually. But when we bring that together with Build and we work within that process, real changes can happen. I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and so it's possible. And yet none of us could do any of that on our own, or even if everybody at Christ the King got together. If we as Christ the King, everybody got together, went to the mayor or went to the chief of police and said, we got something, they'd be kind and, thank you for the idea. And then when we go off, because even a whole parish, even one church all together doesn't have the clout that it needs to get the attention of community leaders to can really do something. So I think that's the beauty of Build, is it lets us come together, give us that avenue to be able to make real substantial changes in our own community and in right here at home. So it's really, it's just works. I mean, I'm convinced it works. That's the bottom line. It works.
Yeah. There's the old line. Well, it's not all that old. I think it was Oscar Romero, the Archbishop of San Salvador, who is regarded as a saint. He said, when When I feed the poor, I'm regarded as a saint. When I ask why they're poor, I'm regarded as a communist. And it's a reminder of the challenge that goes on with this, but also that the fact that it's not easy, and it can open the door to some controversy. And again, that's why we have groups coming together, so that again we can. It's not just one person going on their own wisdom or insight or genius or whatever. It's the group wisdom that comes from a prayerful context. Again, I would ask our viewers, do you even know where, like I don't know where these churches are, or 2-3 years ago, and I know where a few of them are, but not all of them. Consolidated Baptist Church, First African Baptist Church, where the Lexington Friends meet, the Quakers, Open Door Church, Shiloh Baptist Church, Star of Bethlehem Pentecostal Church. Where do we connect with people from these churches other than Build? And it's wonderful to have that. And that's a side point, but it's a very wonderful and important side point that we're the people of God working together, trying to help things.
Hey, Father Paul, I just flashed up there. People are on and
Great.
they're watching in. Here's the list of the 26 congregations, so you can get a glimpse
Yeah.
here. I'll leave it up for a few seconds as we continue.
Sure, that's great. And again, Tim, it might be good to in the next few minutes too to flash up that historic list also of the things that have happened through the ministry of Build. One of the things that's pretty neat too is every semester there's like a pastor's scripture study. So we gather coming from a variety of congregations, and we'll do that 3 times over the course of a couple of months, and we'll have the same scripture passage, and we'll be able to share among ourselves in a Bible study group as pastors. Well, what's this mean to you? How would you preach about this? And it's very again rewarding and powerful, and a great sense of connecting with good people who are dedicated to living their faith and sharing their faith, and then inspire us to go a little deeper from our own standpoint. So yeah, you see the list there, and if y'all want to speak about that a little bit on one thing or the other, that'd be great.
Well, I think just one here right in the middle of the screen is drug treatment program. This was back in 2006. So again, you can see the history here. This has gone on for almost I haven't quite reached 2 decades, but we're going to be closing in on that in a few years. So, but back in 2006, the discovery was made that there was a drug treatment program in the men's prison here in Fayette County, but there was no drug treatment program whatsoever for the women that were in the Fayette County jail. So, Build got behind that, got engaged the leaders at that time, Mayor Teresa Isaac, and they went ahead and invested money into their budget to set that drug treatment program up. And one of the things I'll say about Build, again, these are not just esoteric things. When we create a more just city, when we do the right things, there's a real physical, like a fiscal payoff, right? We save money. We put people in better places because later on we won't be dealing with the expense of undealt with problems. So like in this case, when the women began to get treatment in jail for their drug addiction, fewer of them would show back up in the future. So if we do the right things for the people, then good things happen for our city and for the individuals, obviously, that are the beneficiaries of the direct program. But so that was one that the other one I've always been impressed with was, again, back in the same time period about Lextran. They weren't servicing their routes, weren't helping people that did not have cars. They had jobs, but they needed transportation to get to work. And so they had an employment bus which was put in place that went along the routes where people could on off shift hours could take that bus, get to work, and maintain their employment. So again, to help, it actually helped the economics of the city by putting that in place. But it took a lot of effort to get the problem recognized, and then to get Lextran to step up and allocate the resources. So those are just two that I picked off the list. Meg, I don't know if you have any favorites that you wanted to speak on. There's the drug
Um,
court one at the bottom.
they're all good initiatives, and just from the role that I'm in, I get a lot of calls from people, since you mentioned, transportation, of transportation issues, for people trying to get to their jobs. So, I face a lot of these things in the charitable side, which, supports why we need these kinds of efforts. Tim, do you want to explain 52.1 and the concept of
Sure.
getting everyone,
Yeah.
to Nehemiah action and that?
Yeah. So the Nehemiah action, which is sort of each year, that's the crescendo event. That's when we bring the leaders of our community, we bring the Build team and the community behind Build together to actually make these formal requests to our community leaders to take action on whatever the problems are that we focused on for the year. And the idea of 52.1 is kind of this mantra that we use in Build to say, if we could come together for 52 weeks of the year and we worship, if one time a year we could bring that same group of people to the Nehemiah action, which would be, I don't know, and I don't know what the numbers are, would be in the 30 to 40,000. We'd have to fill Rupp Arena, right? We would fill Rupp Arena if all the churches got their congregation there that one time. But when you do that, if you bring that kind of group together, the community leaders have a big incentive when they see that many of their constituency there asking them to take action. So the idea of 52.1 is, if we can gather together for 52 weeks of the year to worship, can we not come together just one time for justice for our city? So that's our 52.1 model. And again, for those of you that are listening, you come to church every week. Can you give the Build effort 1 week in April? I forget what it is. I think it's April. Give us that one time to come together at the Nehemiah action and do, help us do the work that we're trying to do for our city. So that's the idea of 52.1.
The concept of the Nehemiah assembly is based on the Old Testament book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a cupbearer for the Persian king. In time, Persia, I believe, had conquered the Jewish people. Nehemiah was very dedicated to treating people right, and he heard story after story of how within the Jewish experience, people were being cheated, and there was injustice that was taking place, and even those who were providing food in a time of some famine were asking exorbitant prices, and even demanding the children of those who would be buying from them as like collateral. So it was really some terrible stuff going on. Now, Nehemiah had been promoted to be governor, and so what he did is he brought together an assembly of those who were the cheaters and those who were the victims, those who were taking advantage of them, those who were the people in power, and those who were the people who were not in power. And he just called for people to tell their story. And over again, the story was told, and it's almost like hearts were melting, and some change took place. Now, again, part of Nehemiah's background was that even coming into this as a person of faith, he was involved in a lot of prayer and even fasting. And perhaps a good way to look at the best way to go through build is with prayer and with some fasting, and whether that means we abstain from some of the foods that we're used to, or maybe that we just give some time and give away some of the comfort that we have as we explore some difficult issues and find ourselves feeling with the needs of people who are struggling within our community. So it's almost in that sense that we gather and we have a chance to hear the stories of people from the grassroots situations throughout our community who are struggling, who've got some issues, and we can add our voices to them as supporters, but also as people who, when it's all said and done, just as Deacon Tim suggested, we've all got some issues, whether it's family alienation, whether it's somebody getting caught up in drugs or some other kind of addiction. There's stuff that's out there, and we need to do what we can as we work together to help our community to be a safer and a more secure city. Again, Build is all over the country, or organizations like this that are underneath DART, and honestly, they do work in tandem with a lot of other groups. So it might be a club or a league of voters or organizations like that also notice some needs and also do some advocacy. We're not the only group that gets into the voice of those who are struggling, but we are a strong group, and probably the most strong group that's an interfaith group and that's prayer based. And I think that's part of the power, the real strength of Build, that it's gathering people from faith communities. So Tim and Meg, as we're looking forward to what comes next for our parish, can you speak of that as we're ourselves thinking of working with Build for this upcoming season?
Yeah, so that listening process kicks off next week, right? I'm pulling out my calendar here to make sure I get the right date.
There you go.
You got it there? Okay. I thought it was the 30th, but I have so many different meetings. I wanted to make sure I didn't invite someone to the wrong one. So it's 7 p.m. on September 30th, a Wednesday. So just contact either me or Deacon Tim. We'll send you the link to participate. You can do it from home. And it's very structured. We keep to a specific time frame. I believe, is it an hour and a half, something like that?
Yeah, it's somewhere between an hour and a half. But I think the thing that I would just invite everybody is you're going to learn a lot about Build. It is a listening process. The goal of the meeting is to for us as a parish to hear our own people, right? Who comes and what's bothering you? What's really troubling your life? What keeps you up at night? Some of the questions we ask are just really asking people to tell their story of what is, and it's not just theoretical. Oh, I don't like this about, people rioting in the streets. Okay, that's not it's what's going on in your life. What's keeping you awake at night in your city here, in this place that affects you directly. That's really the question we're asking. So people can come together. But while we're doing that, we're also giving people an update on all the issues that we touched on here. But you'll hear what are those issues that Build is working on, has been working on, and then we'll talk a little bit about what Build is actually, how it works, right, and how that this listening process is the first step. So, and again, I would just encourage everybody again to keep in mind you can do this from home now and take part in it, and your voice will have it. It makes a difference. If you're not there, we can't know what's on your mind. So I would just encourage everybody to participate in this. And again, if you get involved in Build, you can get involved in Build to whatever extent you want. I think before we got on the air, Meg was making the point. If you have a real passion for some of the things going on in our city, and Build is looking at some of those issues right here in Lexington. There's a way for you to get engaged with the research team on a particular issue and actually help set the direction, really participate in that process to find out how other cities similar to Lexington are dealing with that problem and what's worked, what hasn't worked, and to really be a part of that. So, but again, that's not everybody. That's for people who really have that desire to be that engaged. You can certainly be engaged in a lesser degree, but at the end of the day, we hope everybody would come to the Nehemiah Action in April, and that's where we want to really let our community leaders know what we think are the things we need to do for our city. So, but it all starts next Wednesday, 7 p.m. through Zoom, and just let Meg or myself know, and we'll get you that Zoom invitation.
I want to offer three thoughts as we, kind of wrapping it up here. One is that we started off talking a little bit about the Louisville situation and the racial situations. I believe that the issues that that Bill deals with are related. They're related to these kinds of things that drive people to such desperation. So it might not be addressing it directly, but that's all in our hearts right now. And it seems to me that Build is one more way of gradually changing our culture so that such a feeling of racial injustice will be alleviated. I think a second thing is many of us are afraid of anger, our own anger or somebody else's anger. Anger is an emotion, and what we do with it is that's the issue. What we do with our anger. So, is it possible to be a vibrant member of Build without being angry? Oh, sure, but also Build very often taps into our anger, and that's okay if it leads us. That leads us deeper and deeper into passion and compassion. So I think that's a really important point, that we not be afraid of that. The third point I would say would be nobody wants to be a bully or feel like a bully. And yet at the Nehemiah Action, there's got to be some challenge going on, and it's not bullying, it's respect. But it's also realizing that when we're challenged and when a city official is challenged and they're uncomfortable and they're thinking and they're ready to reevaluate, sometimes, lots of times, good things can happen. And I think we can look at that on a personal level. When somebody said to one or the other of us, here's what you're doing, here's where it's going, here's what it's leading to, here's how it makes me feel. And if upon hearing that we feel uncomfortable or something gets stirring inside, that's a critical part of conversion. And I offer that as something to think about in the midst of this, because a lot of times it will happen that a leader is not ready to respond as quickly as we'd like or as actively as we'd like, and yet there still needs to be that challenge. So trust the power of respectful and creative discomfort that we all have at times.
Yeah. And Father Paul, if you don't mind, I'll take us back to I guess it's going back about 6 or 7 years. Time gets away from me. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund that is now well entrenched here in Lexington. It took Build being tenacious for 5 years. I think I'm right, at least 4, if not 5 years. And if we had simply, taken it the first year and got turned down and said, okay, I guess maybe that's too big of a problem, or we can't make it happen, but we didn't. We were the organization together collectively. We came back, and we came back. And like you said, there was tension, there was difference in priorities, but ultimately, we won the day. We won the day, and it wasn't. It wasn't about being right or wrong. It was just saying this was an unjust situation. People need affordable housing, right? And now we have this fund that's getting funded every year, and people are able to have a much easier time finding housing that is acceptable, that they can live in. But it took that real tenacity over several years to be able to win that discussion and with our community leaders. So yeah, it is difficult, but it pays off.
But again, the importance of getting involved early in the process, like starting with the listening session and attending the other meetings, where all participate. That's where it's important to really understand the process, as opposed to just showing up at the end that is the ask and can be more contentious. If you don't have that background of what is going on, the research that's gone in, the previous conversations and meetings with officials to gather information and really understand how those asks were narrowed down and why they are needed, you'll come out with a totally different experience, probably looking at it negatively. And it's really important to get involved in the beginning, starting with the listening process.
Great point, Meg. Yeah.
All righty. Do we have any questions that came in, Tim, or comments?
No.
Okay. Well, I think we're pretty much wrapping it up here. Thank you, Meg and Deacon Tim, for being part of this and for your work with Build. And it's an honor to work along with you as we do this. Next week, we'll be meeting at the same time, 10 o'clock on Thursday. The guest next week will be Bobby Silver, who works with our diocese in their advancement office. So she's going to be a resource person as we talk through the diocesan annual appeal. And we're not going to just talk about the diocesan annual appeal. We're going to talk about the mission work of our diocese in a variety of ways, and the many different aspects of our life as a church that are funded by our diocesan appeal. So again, we look forward to you being with us, and I think one of the things we'll be talking about will be the expansiveness and just the richness of and the variety of who we are as the people of the Diocese of Lexington. So thanks to everyone. Have a great day today. Let's pray for peace and justice. Let's pray for safety and good decisions as we keep moving in this very delicate world of the pandemic, but also as we keep moving. That's the main thing. So we look forward to joining us, if you can, on Wednesday of next week as we have our listening session and get things started with Build for this season. God bless you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day.